Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. I never thought I'd have to fight for my own land that had been in my family for generations. But when a power-hungry HOA president named Karen decided I had too much property, she set off a war she couldn't win. What she didn't know? I don't back down. And by the end of this, she'd lose everything. I've lived on this land my whole life. 500 acres of rolling fields, pastures, and woods, passed down from my grandfather to my father and then to me. This land isn't just property, it's my family's legacy, my livelihood, my home. Every acre has a purpose, whether it's for grazing cattle, growing crops, or simply keeping the land healthy and untouched for future generations. For years, I ran my farm in peace, minding my own business, content with the life I'd built. The closest town was a 20-minute drive away, and my nearest neighbors were either fellow farmers or people who respected the countryside. But that all changed when a brand new housing development sprouted up right on the edge of my property. Sunrise Hill, they called it, a gated community filled with people who had never worked the land a day in their lives. They weren't bad folks, I suppose, but they saw nature as something to be curated, controlled, and landscaped to perfection. With the arrival of this new development came something I never thought I'd have to deal with: a homeowners association. These people had rules about everything: what color your house could be, how often you had to mow your lawn, even what kinds of flowers you could plant in your yard. At first, they left me alone. After all, I wasn't part of their little kingdom, and my land wasn't within their jurisdiction. But then came the invitations. At first, they were polite. Letters in my mailbox asking if I'd like to join the community. The HOA promised benefits, better security, access to their clubhouse, even discounts on maintenance services. I ignored them. My farm didn't need their clubhouse, and I wasn't about to pay fees for someone else to tell me how to run my land. Then, the visits started. At first, it was just 1 or 2 board members from the HOA stopping by, introducing themselves, making small talk, and then subtly bringing up the idea of me joining their association. I turned them down, always politely, but they kept coming back, each time with new benefits and reasons why I should be part of their organization. And then, one day, I met Karen Wilson. Karen wasn't just another HOA member, she was the new president. Tall, blonde, and radiating the kind of self-importance you could spot a mile away, she arrived on my land one sunny afternoon, stepping out of a spotless SUV with a bright, artificial smile plastered on her face. In one hand, she carried a pie. In the other, a folder, probably filled with all sorts of legal nonsense about how I could benefit from her rulebook. "John, it's so wonderful to finally meet you," she chirped, thrusting the pie into my hands as if we were old friends. "I've heard so much about your farm. It must be so much work maintaining all this land by yourself." I didn't bother correcting her. I had a few good ranch hands helping me out, but I already knew where this conversation was going. I'd seen her type before, the kind of person who smiled while they sized you up, figuring out how best to manipulate you. She wasted no time getting to the point. "John, I wanted to personally invite you to become part of our community. I know you've been hesitant, but I really think you'd find it beneficial. Just think. No more dealing with land maintenance all on your own. We have amazing landscapers who could help you keep things looking pristine." I stared at her. "Karen, this is a farm. I don't need landscapers, and I don't need the HOA telling me how to run my own land." Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, but John, you have so much land, more than you could possibly need. A lot of it just sits there, unused. Wouldn't it be wonderful to put it to better use?" Something about the way she said it made my hackles rise. I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what she was implying. "This land has been in my family for generations," I said, my voice firm. "I don't need anyone's help managing it." Karen gave a small, patronizing laugh. "Oh, of course. I understand tradition. But think of the possibilities, John. A park, maybe. Or a new recreational center. Something that benefits everyone." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Karen, let me make this clear. I'm not interested. My land is my land, and I don't need the HOA meddling in it." She hesitated for a second, her fake smile twitching. Then, just as quickly, she brightened again. "Well, I won't push, but just think about it, okay?" I didn't need to think about it. I already knew my answer. Karen left that day. still smiling, but something in her eyes told me she wasn't done with me yet. I had a bad feeling that this was just the beginning. At first, I thought that was the end of it. I had turned down Karen's offer, made it clear I wasn't interested, and expected her to move on. I was wrong. A week later, I got my first official violation notice. Yes, an actual printed notice, placed in an envelope with the HOA's fancy logo on it. According to this ridiculous letter, my farm was in violation of community standards for having overgrown vegetation, unsightly fencing, and unkempt land. I nearly laughed myself hoarse. My farm was being judged by HOA rules. They were talking about fields and pastures, not some overgrown suburban lawn. But it got better. The letter also included a warning that if I didn't rectify these violations within 30 days, I could be fined. Fined by an HOA I wasn't even a part of. I crumpled up the letter, tossed it in the trash, and went about my day. But the HOA wasn't done. A few days later, county inspectors showed up. Apparently, someone had filed a formal complaint that my farm was violating environmental regulations. They checked my livestock pens, my irrigation system, and even tested the soil, looking for contamination or violations. By the time they were done, they were shaking their heads in disbelief. Everything was up to code. In fact, my farm had better environmental standards than most in the area. One inspector even apologized for the waste of time and admitted they had been pressured by some very insistent people. Karen. It had to be Karen. Then came the real kicker. One morning, I got a call from one of my ranch hands telling me I needed to get to the entrance of my property immediately. When I arrived, I nearly blew a gasket. They had put up a damn gate, a shiny metal gate blocking the only public access road to my farm, and attached to it was a big HOA sign stating that this was now a private road for Sunrise Hill residents only. I stepped out of my truck, hands clenched into fists, heart pounding. My workers stood there, staring at the blockade in disbelief. I could see a few of Karen's lackeys, some HOA board members, standing off to the side, watching smugly, probably expecting me to back down and ask them nicely to let me through. They underestimated me. Without a word, I climbed into my tractor, the massive John Deere 8R, revved the engine, and drove straight through the damn gate. Bang! The metal crumpled like tin foil. I didn't stop, didn't slow down, just kept going until there was nothing left but twisted metal and a bunch of dumbfounded HOA members staring at me like I had just performed a magic trick. I hopped out, dusted off my hands, and looked at the stunned board members. This is my land, and this is a public road. Try that again, and I'll send the bill to your HOA. Karen wasn't there that day, but I knew she would hear about it. And I knew she wouldn't take it well. 2 days later, she retaliated. The next morning, I got another visit from county officials. This time, an official from the zoning board. Apparently, someone had filed yet another complaint, claiming my farm had illegal structures on it. I walked the inspector through my land, pointing out that every single barn, shed, and corral was built legally and had proper permits. Once again, Karen had failed, but she wasn't giving up. Over the next few weeks, I became public enemy number one in Sunrise Hill. The HOA newsletter started printing articles about irresponsible land use. Residents started calling in noise complaints about my livestock. Some neighbors even tried dumping trash near my fences, but nothing compared to what came next. One of my ranch hands called me late one night, sounding panicked. "Boss, you need to come see this. It's bad." I jumped in my truck and sped down to the far side of my property where the woods bordered Sunrise Hill. What I saw made my blood boil. Dozens of trees had been cut down, huge, old oaks and maples, gone. The land had been cleared as if someone was preparing to build something. I stormed through the wreckage, pushing past fallen branches and fresh dirt. And that's when I saw it, a wooden stake hammered into the ground with a sign that read, "Future site of Sunrise Hill Community Park." I stood there, heart pounding, fists clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. Karen wasn't just trying to bully me into submission anymore, she was trying to take my land. The moment I saw that sign, I knew this had gone beyond petty HOA nonsense. Karen wasn't just trying to annoy me anymore, she was making a move to steal my land outright. I didn't waste time. The next morning, I called my lawyer, an old friend of my father's who had seen every kind of land dispute imaginable. He listened to my story, sighed, and said, "John, you're dealing with a snake, and I guarantee you she's already got a plan in motion." He was right. A few days later, I found a legal notice stuffed in my mailbox. Karen had officially filed a lawsuit against me. Her claim? I owned too much land. I had to read it 3 times just to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me. The lawsuit argued that I was hoarding land that was not being utilized effectively, that 60% of my property was wasted and should be redistributed for the community's benefit. It got worse. Karen had doctored historical property maps, claiming that my family had falsified land surveys over a century ago. According to her, nearly 280 acres of my farm actually belonged to Sunrise Hill and should be absorbed into the HOA. I was so furious I could barely think straight. This woman, this entitled, manipulative, power-hungry lunatic, was trying to use legal loopholes to steal my family's legacy right out from under me. I needed to talk to her. I marched straight to her pristine, picture-perfect house in Sunrise Hill, stomped up to her front door, and pounded on it so hard I saw the curtains twitch. Karen opened the door with a sickeningly smug smile. "Oh, John, what a surprise. I was just about to have some tea. Care to join me?" I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. "What the hell is this, Karen?" I growled, holding up the lawsuit papers. "You're trying to take my land through the courts now? You could have at least had the guts to say it to my face." She tilted her head as if she were genuinely confused. "John, it's nothing personal. It's about what's fair." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Karen, I'm giving you one chance to drop this. Let's talk like adults. I don't want to drag this into court, but if you push me, I will fight you tooth and nail." She actually laughed. "Oh, John, that's so sweet, but this is bigger than you. The land needs to be used for the good of the community, not just hoarded by one stubborn farmer." I took a step forward, lowering my voice. "This isn't about the community. This is about you trying to take something that doesn't belong to you. You've been harassing me for months, and now you're pulling this stunt. If you go through with this, you'll regret it." Her smug grin widened. "We'll see about that. I'll see you in court, John." And with that, she shut the door in my face. I stood there for a long moment, my hands clenched into fists. Fine. If she wanted a war, she was about to get one. I called my lawyer that night and told him to go all in. We hired surveyors to reconfirm every single boundary of my land. We went through old county records, dug up every deed, every transaction, everything that would prove that my land had been rightfully owned for generations. And then we found something interesting. During the survey, one of my guys came back to me, looking a little baffled. "Boss, we found something weird." He handed me a folder. Inside were aerial images of a large hidden structure deep in my woods. A house, a huge house, with a pool and a private drive. And according to the legal records, it was sitting on my land. I stared at the images in disbelief. Karen had built a secret mansion on my land, and now she was trying to claim that I had stolen it from her. I laughed so hard I nearly cried. She had just buried herself. I stood there, staring at the aerial images of that massive hidden estate, my mind struggling to process the sheer audacity of what I was seeing. Karen, the same Karen who had the nerve to take me to court for owning too much land, had built herself a damn luxury getaway on my property, and she thought she could get away with it. My surveyor shifted uncomfortably, waiting for me to say something. "You sure about this?" I finally asked, flipping through the documents again. 100%, he confirmed. "The house is sitting right inside your property line. No permits, no records of a sale, nothing." I felt a slow grin creep across my face. "Oh, Karen," I muttered, shaking my head. "You really did it this time." I wasted no time. I sent my lawyer everything, the aerial footage, the legal property lines, and the undeniable proof that Karen had illegally built her private oasis on land she didn't own. The next morning, I drove out there myself. The place was hidden deep within a dense tree line, far away from any roads or walking paths, like she had tried to keep it a secret. But there it was, a massive, pristine, white stucco mansion with a blue-tiled infinity pool. The kind of house that looked like it belonged in Beverly Hills, not tucked away in the woods of a stolen property. I saw landscapers tending to the garden. A sleek black Mercedes was parked in the driveway. This wasn't just a vacation home. This was a full-time, functioning residence. And Karen had the audacity to sue me? I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. She had no idea what was coming. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, reporters, even a few county officials. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when the arrogant queen of the HOA finally had to answer for her actions. I sat at the defendant's table, calm, composed, but boiling inside. Across from me, Karen was perched at her table like she had already won. She wore a pristine cream-colored suit, her blonde bob perfectly styled, her lips curled into that insufferable, smug smile. She really thought she had me. The judge, a no-nonsense man in his 60s, entered, and the bailiff called the court to order. Karen's lawyer stood first, launching into his self-righteous monologue. Your Honor, today we seek justice for the residents of Sunrise Hill. My client, Ms. Wilson, has presented substantial evidence proving that Mr. Reeves has been unlawfully hoarding vast amounts of land, much of which was never legally his to begin with. This land could serve the community, and we request that the court rectify these unjust landholdings. I could practically hear the gasps from the audience. Unjust landholdings. My blood boiled, but I kept my expression neutral. Then it was my lawyer's turn. He stood, adjusted his tie, and absolutely tore into them. Your Honor, my client has lived on this land for generations. Every inch of his property is legally documented, surveyed, and accounted for. But Ms. Wilson, he paused, flipping through his folder for dramatic effect before looking up, has failed to mention one crucial detail. He walked over to the evidence table and tapped the stack of aerial photos. This estate, Your Honor, does not belong to Ms. Wilson. It sits entirely on Mr. Reeves's land, and she built it without permits, without legal ownership, and without even notifying county authorities. In other words, he turned and looked Karen directly in the eye. Ms. Wilson is accusing my client of stealing land while she herself has been illegally squatting on it for over a year. The courtroom went dead silent. Karen's face went from smug superiority to pure horror in half a second. That's absurd, she stammered, turning to her lawyer, who looked like he wanted to sink into his chair. My lawyer didn't stop. Not only is Ms. Wilson's lawsuit baseless, but she also knowingly falsified documents in an attempt to claim ownership of Mr. Reeves' property. And, let's not forget, he picked up another folder, flipping it open. The trees she had illegally cut down. Damages estimated at over $1.5 million. Karen's hands were trembling now. I had no idea. There must be a mistake. The judge wasn't buying it. He turned to her, eyes ice cold. Ms. Wilson, do you deny that this house is yours? Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Then the judge turned back to my lawyer. You're certain that these property records are accurate? My lawyer nodded. Beyond a doubt, Your Honor. Karen let out a shaky breath, gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. The judge sighed and took off his glasses. This is one of the most egregious cases of legal manipulation I've seen in my career. Not only is the plaintiff's case entirely without merit, but her actions amount to fraud, trespassing, and destruction of private property. Karen let out a strangled gasp. The judge wasn't finished. Ms. Wilson, you are hereby ordered to pay Mr. Reeves $1.5 million in damages. Additionally, given the falsification of official records, the court is recommending a full investigation into potential criminal charges, including fraud and perjury. Karen went completely white. No, this isn't fair. Enough, Ms. Wilson. The judge's voice was final. Court is adjourned. I sat back in my chair as Karen slumped forward, burying her face in her hands. She had walked into this courtroom expecting to take my land. Instead, she had lost everything. As the judge's gavel struck the desk, the courtroom erupted into murmurs. Reporters scribbled furiously. Neighbors exchanged stunned glances. And Karen looked like her entire world had just imploded. She sat frozen, staring blankly at the desk in front of her, her perfectly styled hair now slightly disheveled. Her breath was shaky, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. The smug, all-knowing queen of the HOA had just been obliterated in court, and she knew it. I stood up, stretching my arms, relishing the feeling of victory. I had offered her a chance, a peaceful way out. I had knocked on her door, asked her to talk this through like adults, but she was the one who shut that door in my face. She was the one who dragged me to court, humiliated herself, and lost everything. And now, she had no one to blame but herself. As I walked past her table, she suddenly shot up from her seat, eyes burning with rage, desperation, and, if I wasn't mistaken, a glimmer of panic. "John." Her voice cracked as she said my name, loud enough that the few remaining people in the courtroom turned to watch. "You don't have to do this. We can negotiate. Please." I turned, raising an eyebrow. "Negotiate?" I repeated, feigning curiosity. "Karen, I tried to negotiate months ago. I knocked on your door, remember? I asked you to talk, and you told me you'd see me in court." She flinched, as if my words physically hit her. I didn't know it would end like this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was just trying to do what was right for the community." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Karen, the only person you were ever looking out for was yourself." She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. "This isn't fair," she muttered weakly, more to herself than to me. "I didn't deserve this." That was it. The breaking point. I watched as her body trembled, and then, to the absolute shock of everyone still in the courtroom, Karen burst into tears. Not delicate, dignified tears. Full-on, uncontrollable sobbing. Her shoulders shook, her breath hitched, and the mighty, arrogant Karen Wilson, the woman who thought she could take my land, control my property, and walk all over me, was now a sobbing mess in the middle of a courtroom. One of her HOA board members awkwardly stepped toward her, patting her back, but even they looked embarrassed. I sighed dramatically, loud enough for her to hear. "If only someone had warned you." And with that, I walked out, leaving Karen to drown in her own humiliation. A few weeks after the trial, things had changed drastically, at least for Karen. She had disappeared from Sunrise Hill, leaving behind nothing but whispers, a mountain of legal troubles, and a foreclosure notice on her former home. Word had spread fast about the infamous HOA president who tried to steal a farmer's land and ended up bankrupt and facing criminal charges. Me? I was doing just fine. The best part? Karen's luxurious illegal mansion, the one she so desperately tried to hide, was now legally mine. I stood in front of it one afternoon, hands on my hips, surveying the property with a smirk. The infinity pool sparkled under the sun, the perfectly manicured lawn stretched out before me, and the sleek, modern architecture was comically out of place in the middle of my rugged farmland. One of my ranch hands, Rick, leaned on the fence next to me, chewing on a toothpick. "So, boss, what's the plan? You gonna move in?" he asked with a chuckle. I laughed, shaking my head. "Hell no. This place is fancier than a country club on steroids. But I've got a better idea." That night, I listed the mansion on Airbnb. I called it the Karen Retreat, a luxurious getaway on stolen land. The description? Come stay in the infamous illegally built estate of Karen Wilson. Experience firsthand the house that a power-hungry HOA president tried to steal. Now available for weekend getaways. Pool included. HOA rules not enforced. The listing blew up. Within days, bookings flooded in. Turns out people loved the idea of staying in a house built by a Karen who got what she deserved. Social media ate it up. Tourists, influencers, even a few YouTubers came just to get pictures in the house that karma claimed. One morning, as I sat on my porch drinking coffee, I got an email notification, another booking. Then my phone buzzed. A news outlet wanted to interview me about the Karen Retreat. I chuckled to myself, shaking my head. Who knew? Karen wanted my land so badly, and now she was the one paying me for it. The irony was just too perfect.